So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Is It That Bad? Where we take a look at an album that maybe got mixed reviews, and we're here to listen to it again and determine, like, was it that bad or was it misjudged? And for this episode, my friend Lorenzo here had an interesting one. He said, let's talk about a band that obviously has a very devoted fan base, but obviously hasn't put out an album in years, even though, hint, they have reunited. I say reunited in quotes because, there's two people who can't be on that reunion. So we're talking about Pantera. And no, we're not going to talk about, like, what's the name? Magic Power, or whatever it was before. We're not going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about the last album, Reinventing the Steel, the last album that came on March 21st, March 21st, 2000. And yeah, this was the album cover, which I remember back in the day thinking that this was a supremely lazy album cover. It's just a drunk guy like jumping over a fire. So yeah, so Lorenzo picked this album, and I gotta be honest, I had not listened to this album in a long time. I just remember one song actually, which is Revolution Is My Name. So a little bit of backstory on this album. This album is the only Pantera studio album that did not reach platinum sales status. So it's the one with the less sales. And in 2022, Rex Brown got in an interview said that he blamed the new metal for them having not that many sales. And another interesting quote, this is Phil Anselmo's favorite Pantera album. So yeah, just a few facts.
Pretty crazy to me.
It sounds crazy to me too. So what we're gonna do for this one, since Lorenzo picked this album, we're gonna start with Lorenzo, then we'll go Justin, Matthew, JC, and then me. So you know the drill, people. We have the 3 rounds. First round, we give our initial thoughts when we first listen to this. Then round 2, we're gonna pick three tracks that we think are the weakest. And then round 3, we're gonna give our final thoughts and rating of a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. So Lorenzo, initial thoughts when you listen to this.
Well, I picked this album because I was looking for bands that were, big and, had maybe albums that they're good, but maybe it's been a while. And when I went back in my mind, I tried to remember songs from this album, and I remember a lot of songs from the other albums from Pantera in the 90s, and I could only remember Revolution. Revolution Is My Name. That was the only song I remembered. So I was thinking, okay, let me listen to this album again, and I wrote you, and I was like, this might be a good subject because it's not as good as I remembered. and I'm not saying it's bad. My first impressions it's not that it's bad at all. It's just that when you think about Pantera and you think about those albums that they made in the 90s, I think they're pretty freaking great. And when all their albums are so good, and you have this last album, which is basically the last album before they break up, and it's not that good. It's not as good. So I was like, that's why I picked it, and that's my initial thoughts. And also, I think the artwork is super lazy compared with the other artwork, which is pretty awesome. That artwork is super lazy. But that's basically that's basically my initial thoughts.
Yeah.
The good thing is, since I don't have a YouTube channel, they can't get me for hate. So
they can't get you. That's okay. I'll put Lorenzo's address in the comments.
Put it in, baby. Put it in. We come.
They'll come for you. So good initial thoughts. What about you, Justin?
All right. So when you asked me to do this album, I didn't realize that people disliked this album. I thought that like hillbillies just loved every Pantera album. But no, I was kind of unsure. Like I didn't know if I could even be impartial because like I don't like Pantera. I really don't like Phil. I felt like I
Oh,
got selected for like jury duty on the OJ Simpson trial with this one. But initially like when this thing came out, never really gave it much of a listen. I didn't care for Far Beyond Driven, didn't really care for Southern Trendkill. Like by this thing came out 2000, by then like I was just totally had moved on. So I had to give it a fresh listen. Like this is really probably the first time I really listened to the whole album start to finish. Tried to give it a fair shake. In order to do so, I convinced myself that it was like unreleased Exhorter material, and I think that kind of helped. So it might have worked. Like halfway through, I kind of forgot I was listening to Pantera. Started getting into some of the tracks. Like I've got some thoughts. We'll get into that.
Nice. So what about you, Matthew?
I was really happy that you suggested this album to me because this is probably the only Pantera album that I've never actually listened to besides hearing the name Revolution Is My Name. I never listened to it, and I only recently got into Pantera maybe 10-ish years ago, and I listened to I always listened to the song Cowboys from Hell because it was always everywhere, but I never really got into Pantera until like 10 years ago and started digging into their catalog. And this album, everyone was always like, "It's the worst. Don't it's terrible. It's bad." Da, da, da. And I was like, "Listen, I'll just go back to the older albums." I just always skipped it over purposely because people said it was that bad. But because I started a YouTube channel, I was like, "Well, doing these stuff, I gotta listen to stuff that even when people saying if it's good or bad, I gotta listen to it." And yeah, everyone's kind of saying it didn't hit the charts and everything, and I can see why. There's a lot of uh it's not like their best material from what I think from compared to their other albums like Far Beyond Driven, Vulgar Display and stuff, but it's still better than a lot of like other bands top tier stuff. Like I think one thing I really liked about this one compared to like Cowboys from Hell, the production is pretty good here. It sounds good. I'll give them that. I think by the end of the career of the band, they knew how to make an album sound good. So that's pretty good. And there's a couple of tracks here that I really enjoyed, like Death Rattle, Hellbound. Those ones really like stuck out to me in terms of just how aggressively cool they were and stuff. Those and yeah, like not the worst from their stuff. Oh, not the best of their stuff, but it doesn't live up to somewhat the Pantera name and everything. And but I was thoroughly enjoying it because I never listened to it, and I could have listened to worse stuff maybe.
Like hot singles in your area?
Uh,
I take Pantera over Hot Singles. Oh,
Oh,
it's neck
thank
and neck.
God,
Let's go.
man.
It's neck and neck.
Okay, so what about you, JC?
okay. Yeah, I've been a big Pantera fan. Well, back when they released Vocal Display Power, I had that. That's like one of my favorite albums of all time. And after that, I like the ones after that, especially like Great Southern Tranquil. I think they got like a very heavy. And then after Great Southern Tranquil, they released this, and I think they kind of went a little backwards to more of a Cowboys or a Vocal Display of Power type of sound. Now, I didn't listen to it when it came out in the year 2000, but I remember I think I was watching MTV News or something, and this, for some reason, it's always stuck with me that they were doing an interview and they said that they got the name Reinventing the Steel because they took it from the Judas Priest album British Steel, and they went to like do an album that's just like pure like heavy metal. So that's why they called it Reinventing the Steel. So I mean that's something I always like remembered. But as far as listening to it, I listened to it later when when streaming was more available. So I think that there are songs I like. I picked a few that maybe were the weaker ones, which I'll talk about next. And like I think out of all the albums, I mean, not counting the glam, I'm talking about like Cowboys. And after that, I mean, I think this is probably like towards the bottom out of those five, but I'm not saying it's a bad album at this point in the video. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts. Yeah.
Nice. I don't know about you guys, but when Jay-Z said in the year 2000, in my mind, I went like, in the year 2000. Like, I love that Conan show. So for me, I actually bought this album when it came out. I don't know. Apparently I was at the mall in 2000 and I saw it. I'm like, fuck it. I'll get this Pantera album. And I think I listened to it when it came out and then I forgot about it. I just remember Revolution is my name. And another fun fact, this is the only album that wasn't produced by Terry Date. The Abbott brothers produced this album. So they took the production upon themselves. So maybe that's a difference, even though the production, I have no problem with the production in here. I would say that the problem with this album is that it's more on the generic side of things, I think. It's more like Pantera on Cruise Control. When I'm listening to these songs
Ooh.
like 24 years later, and I know a lot of people like, hey, Pantera is like a holy grail band that you cannot shit on. And of course, Dimebag, Darrell, and Vinnie Paul were amazing musicians. But I also think Phil Anselmo is a piece of shit. So I have no qualms saying that. So yeah, I remember when this came out, I listened to it, but I honestly couldn't remember just one song. And when I think of Pantera, I think I like more. I think of Vulgar Display and Far Beyond Driven. Those are the albums that I think of. But I gotta say also as well, I like Pantera, but I never been a fanboy. So I can listen
Mm.
to it without being like a fanboy. So those are my initial thoughts. So now we're going to round two. We're gonna pick three tracks. So Lorenzo, which tracks did you pick and why?
Oh man. I think I don't think I hated like any tracks, especially like hate, just like just like pure hatred from the heart. It's just more like eh. I mean, I don't think there's that many songs here that I would like remember. It's pretty forgettable for me, except for a couple of songs. I think there's a couple of cool, like good songs, but most of it is like, okay. For example, we'll grind that X for a long time. I just thought it was okay. Yeah, nothing much there. Not very interesting. Very forgettable. Um, you've got to belong to it. I did not like the song. I think what I did not like about that was I hated the guitar sounds in that one. Um, they were too much. I know that Phil Dimebag used to do those kind of like effects with his guitar, but I think they were like up to 11 in that song, and they were not very appealing to my ear, especially. I get it. I would understand if somebody else would like that, but that's not my style. And I think the last song was just like kind of a whimper. It, I hated the outro with the spoken word stuff and the guitar sounds again. Also I think this is one of the few albums where there's no really memorable solos. Like there's no like Dimebag going really like, into it, getting really into it. So I think it's mostly just songs that I just found forgettable. I like Hellbound, for example, but I thought it was too short. I wished it would have been a little bit longer. I was getting in the groove when it was like, okay, it's over. And it felt kind of incomplete. I think this album just felt a little incomplete in my mind. Um, and I'm not an expert. I don't play any instruments, so I'm not an expert in that area. But as a listener, that's what I felt. Like nothing was as fleshed out as from songs and albums that I've heard from before, except for songs like Revolution is My Name, which I think is a solid song, and which is probably why they picked it as their single. But you know, that's at least those are the three songs that I dislike the most.
Yeah, nice. Maybe they needed Terry Date.
Actually, I thought that I couldn't hear Rex at all in this album. I think the bass was totally lost for that's what I thought. But you know, I don't know.
They did injustice. They did an injustice for Rex. Yeah. That maybe he should say that's the reason that they didn't sell. They didn't put the bass on it. But now that you mention it, I can't remember like hearing the bass that much either. So that's it. Yeah, that's a good analysis, Lorenzo. So what about you, Justin?
All right, so what's funny, there's like 17 versions of this thing online. I picked the Terry Date mixes to listen to because I figured they would sound the best. So there was like when they put out the 20th anniversary, they had a couple different mix options and they were on different discs. But yeah, the Terry Date version actually sounded pretty damn good sonically. So could be something to what you're saying. But I totally agree with Lorenzo. I think like the theme of this album was weird, off-putting guitar noises. And I know this was 2000, so like maybe that stuff was new, it was cutting edge or whatever, but like it just didn't age well. So songs I picked, You've Got to Belong to It, horrible song. Just that one obnoxious guitar noise, like just nonstop the whole song. Again, like I don't know if that was cool back then, but like it was totally overdone. Stupid lyrics, bad song.
I mean,
moving on. And again, it's the theme of the album. So Uplift, it starts another corny 90s, like not very well executed, not very well thought out guitar riff. And then instead of just like running from it, they beat it to death. They played it like 9,000 times. He's got lyrics about running headfirst into traffic, which Phil, if you're listening, by all means, go ahead. But then like later in the song,
die shouting, he'll be like white power, and then he'll
gets fucking run down by a big white truck or something. But yeah, the song gets cool for like 3 seconds. And then when you definitely hear the bass is that weird, goofy little jam out section where they go into like that bass solo for like 2 seconds and you don't know what's going on. And then right back into the bad riffs. So it's like, and then more Meathead lyrics, 3 minutes and 45 seconds of my life I'm never going to get back. Right into the next song, It Makes Them Disappear, which I thought was just like, this was the mother of all stupid guitar choices, bad production. I don't know what in the hell that like 1989 Digitech floorboard processor effect thing was in the intro, and I don't know why anybody thought that was a good idea. Terry Date probably would have like killed that. They probably did need him around, but by the time you get into the song, you start to forget about that obnoxious fucking intro. They bring it back, and then they do it to you again, like 30 seconds later, for no reason whatsoever. It didn't add anything to the song. Totally took away from it. But the rest of the song, it wasn't terrible. It was too long, but like that part of the song was so bad and so obnoxious that like that has to be probably the single worst song on the album. So those are my picks.
Good picks, man. I like how you say it, because yeah, those noises. So what about you, Matthew?
I just comment, Justin, I love your commentary. Fucking choice. Amazing. I would say You've Got to Belong.
He plays music, so he knows what the fuck he's talking about.
I love how raw and intense this commentary is. I fucking love it. It's wonderful. Me as well. You've Got to Belong to It. I guess the way Lorenzo and Justin talking about it, the guitar tuning on it sounded weird, even though I kind of did like it. Reminded me like it sounded like a chainsaw kind of whatever he was doing in that song, but it does sound really weird, the guitar riffs on that particular song. And like I kind of get where the lyrics are coming from, like you got to belong to like the scene and everything, but it does seem a little bit too try hard and a little bit yeah. And I think just I'm hearing you guys' way of talking about this, I guess since they are producing it themselves, They didn't have their usual producer, so they were like, I feel like they were experimenting a little bit more, and some songs did feel incomplete. But I think maybe because they might have like, we're gonna make music later, or we're gonna take a break and then come back to it. So they're like, let's fucking just do some weird shit. And this is one of those songs where it's kind of weird, especially on those guitar riffs and everything. Not a fan of that. And then I really didn't like Revolution Is My Name. I thought it
The
felt
fucking
very,
song on the record.
Like the
I
only
know.
good song on the record.
It felt really bland to me. It felt very like just kind of there. The riffs were a little bit erratic here and there, but it just felt like, I would say, okay, like it's not a horrible song, but it just was like, oh, this is the song they went with. Okay, like, all right, it's okay. Like, if this is what they're putting out, okay. Yeah, it felt a little bit flat to me, especially the vocals. Didn't really feel them. Wasn't really liking them as much. And then Uplift. Uplift is like generally a song I did not like on this album because what was it? It just felt really sloppy. Like it just felt like it didn't feel very coherent, especially from the guitars and everything. But I did like the little like you do get a little bit of the bass for a minute, for a second or stuff. But then it just feels like a very sloppy, incoherent mess with this song and the transitions between like different parts in the song. Nah, not very uplifting, I feel like. Nah. But those are my three.
Nice. What about you, JC?
Yeah, I know a lot of you mentioned it. The first one, You've Got to Belong to It. I think it's just that guitar riff. It's just very like squeaky, like a squeal. It's just like it doesn't hit your ear like properly. But otherwise, like the song itself is not bad. It's just that guitar riff kind of like ruins it a little bit. My second one is going to be a Death Rattle. I don't know if anyone mentioned this, but supposedly, like this was on an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. I didn't see this. I didn't like look up the scene, but supposedly they had the song in it. But I think it was, I guess, like forgettable. Like I think there wasn't anything like special about it. Not that I didn't like it. It was just like not memorable. Like when we get into the next round, I'll say there will be some songs that I like to talk about, but that was kind of forgettable. And then the other one will grind an axe for a long time right after that. Another one, kind of boring, kind of forgettable, just like the guitar riffs weren't there. It just felt like one of those like filler tracks. I mean, for me, like I like the first three songs. I'll mention like Revolution Is My Name. I like that song a lot, but I think like the intro kind of has some weird sounds to it. So I thought the intro was a little annoying, but after the first 30 seconds, I like really like the song. So that's kind of like a unofficial fourth pick I'll pick, but just because of that intro. And that's it. Yeah, those are my three. Yeah.
Nice. So I guess that leaves me. So I think Uplift sucks. It's just like so stupid, the lyrics. He's like, I want to run to traffic. Oh. And I don't
Split
know.
my head in two and see it twice.
I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, I wonder if they wrote this song drunk. They're like, let's do some stupid shit. And then they write this song. And why Uplift? Why couldn't it be called like running into traffic? Like, because I'm like, there's nothing uplifting about this track. And I don't know. I think it felt like the production on this one, it felt very noisy and like you can't appreciate anything. So that's why I picked it. I would pick second. What's the one with the weird like intro? Is it makes them disappear, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that to me, that guitar, I don't know, were they trying to be Corn? Like because they say something about like new metal was pretty interesting. So I wonder if they tried to write like a new metal riff a little bit and keep the Pantera, but just have that just to see like if it would stick. But yeah, it sounds like Lorenzo said, it's not good to the ears, man. It feels annoying, and unless you're Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, you can do those noises. But if you're not Tom Morello, no, come on, yeah. And I agree with what Lorenzo said. Like this album has no memorable guitar solo. uh, by Dimebag. Because every other album, like Walk, it has that riff that you remember like 5 minutes alone. But on this one, even in Revolution is My Name, it's a cool track, but I don't think it has something like this, that riff that it stays in your mind, at least for me. And the others, I know that a lot of people said that they like Hellbound, but I gotta say I thought it sucked as a like it's 2 minutes and 41 seconds. It sounds sloppy. I didn't think it was that great to start the album, so I want to pick that one to pick one difference. So yeah, everyone has picked songs, a few in common. So now we're going to the third and final round where we're gonna give it our last thoughts and our rating. So Lorenzo, your last thoughts on this one that you picked?
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not, for me, it's not Pantera's best album at all. It's probably their worst of the, Cowboys onwards. And when those guitar sounds that we were harping on a little bit, I remember when they did them, when Dimebag used them in Cemetery Gates, when he's matching Phil's high note, it worked because it had like a reason. It was done for a reason. Here they sounded more like just do them because they're my signature now. So I'm just gonna throw them around. At least that's how I felt. I liked some songs. I know everybody hated the intro for what was it called? It makes them disappear. But I actually like the rest of that track. I like the rest of that track because it's very different from everything else in the album.
I agree with you, Lorenzo. I agree.
It's something about it's because the album, Pantera has its style, and you know what you're gonna get usually when you listen to a Pantera. It's like when you listen to AC/DC. They're not gonna, experiment with, too much. So I expected a style, a specific style. So when something takes you out of it a little bit, I like that. The intro is weird. I agree. I agree with Justin, and I agree with Hector on that. But the rest of the song I like. So I mean, I'm probably never gonna listen to this album again. But I'm gonna pick a couple of the songs and I'm gonna put them on my, my Spotify playlist. And that's gonna be probably the last time I'm gonna. It's weird because I passed through I was in a record store and I passed through this album, this vinyl, and I was like, man, I don't have a Pantera vinyl. But then I was like, this is $30. I'm not gonna pay $30 for this album.
Man.
So that's basically my review. I might listen to a couple of songs on Spotify, but I'm not gonna buy the vinyl. So I don't know if that makes it a thumbs down or a thumbs slightly down.
Yeah, the sideways. You can do the sideways.
Sideways, that's fine. Yeah, sideways.
It's what the kids now call mid. Yeah. So what about you, Justin?
All right. So if this album gets credit for anything, I think it kind of paved the way for like 1,000 metalcore bands to put panic chords and guitar noises in the middle of breakdowns. So like its legacy is like forever cemented in the core scene. But
hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah, brother Dime. I expected to hate this album more than I hated it, like if we're being totally honest. Again, the Terry Date mix actually sounded really good, and with that modern production, like he remastered it in 2020, it actually brought it to more of a modern place and kind of took it into a different world from like, everyone, when you think Pantera, you think Cowboys, you think Vulgar Display, and then you think of like the inevitable like downward spiral they went into after that. But like with like a fresh sheen over top of it, it didn't sound bad. Had some clever moments. Like I thought Revolution's a pretty killer track, and like I remember that. But like that main like that little walk down riff, that's like a heavy fucking riff. I even did kind of like the goofy breakdown part. To me, like Southern Trendkill is a way worse album than this one. I know that some people will hate that opinion, but it's Pantera, so I'll probably never
Actually,
listen
don't
to it
remember
again.
that one either, so I can't say.
It's bad. Like, I think you should do an episode on that one. That's real bad. But
No.
like I'll never listen to this album again either. So like I'm with Lorenzo. I probably won't even listen to even the best song on the album ever again. But contrary to what people are expecting me to say, not a bad album. Actually kind of enjoyed it for a few moments. Like I said, if you just kind of like put Phil out of your mind, forget that it's Pantera. There are some really cool riffs, even like some of the dronier songs that have kind of like a down influence. There's some heavy grooves. Not bad. I'm gonna fucking shock everybody. Thumbs up. Pink. Pink. Forgot I had my hair tie on my wrist. I look like a fucking nerd. Thumbs up.
Nice. So we have a thumbs sideways and a thumbs up. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, it's same with Justin. Like, I heard so much about it and negative talk about this album, but then as I was listening to it, I literally had the face like, I'm liking this more than I thought I would. It's got some fun parts to it, some good songs here and there. I think the low parts are not as bad as other bands when they hit a lower part. Like, yeah, they switched it up, doing some other experimental stuff. And like I said, it's Pantera kind of coasting a little bit, but even Pantera coasting, still pretty fucking good, I think, and everything. And it's got some good groove to it, some bounce to it. I think the one thing that's still consistently good, the drumming. I never had any complaints listening to the drumming. The bass was a little bit lost out in a lot of the mixes, I felt like, besides a few parts where it's like a breakdown or they just had like the bass playing by itself, then you could kind of hear it. The riffs and the vocals, the lyrics are probably the worst part of this album, even though like the riffs are the most important thing to Pantera. So, but it's still not that bad. And I liked it way more than I thought I would. And it's like barely skating on by. But like if you just doing it like all of their albums, including the stuff before Cowboys and everything, I think it still holds up pretty well. And I would go with Justin as well too and say it's good. It's good enough to be a thumbs up.
Okay, so we have one thumb sideways, two thumbs up. What about you, JC?
Okay, for me, I think it's pretty good. I think like the first three songs are really good. I mean, Hellbound, Goddamn Electric, Yesterday Don't Mean Shit. Those are some pretty good songs. I thought they're probably the best on the album. And then after that was the song that like a lot of us picked. You Gotta Belong to It. Okay, so maybe that one's like a little weaker than Revolution Is My Name, really good song. And then after that, maybe like in the middle part where it drags a little bit, and then the last three songs I kind of liked. A lot of you talk about uplifts. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. I kind of liked it. I like that bass guitar solo in the middle of the song where they do that distorted part. I like that part, and then it makes them disappear. I kind of like that one as well because it had like that kind of like a psychedelic intro, a little slower, a little darker song, and then I'll Cast a Shadow. I thought it's just classic. I thought that was just like them going for that classic sound, something more along the lines of like a Vulgar Display or Cowboys from Hell type of sound. I thought that's a good song. So it's a thumbs up for me. I think I don't really have any problems with it. I think compared to like the classic five albums, it might be the worst, or I'll say weakest. I don't want to say worst, but it's not bad. Like I'll like listen to this again at times. Like I didn't like dislike it that much, but it's a thumbs up for me. Yeah.
Okay, so whatever I do, this album is saved. But I gotta say, this album, I wouldn't say it's bad, but I would also wouldn't say it's the best. It's there. It has some solid moments, but it feels like they're coasting, like Pantera on cruise control. Like I didn't like those effects, and I think the worst thing in this album is the lyrics. But when I think of Pantera, I never felt like they have the best lyrics ever. No. I think about like the guitar solos and the groove. So this album, I would say it's a mid. It's a thumbs mid. It's not bad. It's not great, but I will never listen to it again. but I wouldn't also give it a thumbs down because I still think the worst Pantera album is better than a lot of crappy albums. So there you go. So yeah, this album, people, is not that bad. We all, like the five of us have said, it's not their best record, but it's also not bad. So if it was like a Pantera like ranking, I would put this in. I would have to listen to the Southern one because I can't remember that record. But yeah, compared to the Cowboys, and I would say to me like Vulgar is first and then Far Beyond Driven. But besides those, I think yeah, that's what I would say. So yeah, we've saved this album, so we want to know from you, Couchers, what would you give this album? A thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down? And for those of you that haven't seen it, I'm gonna put a video. The only video I did for Pantera was when they did the reunion tour, and I asked the question: is it a cash grab? I still think it is. But I'm gonna post that video because that video was interesting. I got a few people like mad at me for saying that, but hey, there's two people in the band that are not there. So and very important people. I think Pantera without the sound of Darrell on guitar, it's not like Pantera. I'm sorry, Zach Wild, but no. So yeah, so we've saved this album. So yeah, like we want to know from you, Couchers, and I think coming up next for Is It That Bad? I think there's another YouTuber that reached out to me that he wants to talk about an Elton John record. I'm like, wow, I only I know the single, so I'm like, which Elton John record? I can't remember right now, but yes, we'll talk about Elton John at some point. And there's a few newer albums that are going to be out. I think new Mushroom Head is gonna be out soon, so that's an Is It That Bad episode. So Mushroom Head, Falling in Reverse. There's newer albums that are coming out that I want to talk about in this series because yeah, I think I'm probably assuming that they're bad. So we can talk to them. So we want to know from you, Couchers, what other albums would you like us to cover? Comment down below if something that we haven't covered in the past. We haven't talked about Van Halen 3. That's a good album. I would like to talk about that album. I think I bought it once and I'm like, that would be an interesting one. So maybe that one, Lorenzo, that would be a good one to do with you. Like, yeah, people, I want to thank, my guest, Lorenzo. He does not have a channel, but you can be
all the hate in the comments.
You can get the hate in the comments and I will send to him the comments like, oh, fuck that guy and his beard. So, and Justin, he plays in Worker, so you can follow his band, and he's gonna be hosting a podcast really soon. What's the name of the podcast, man? I forgot the name.
I'm taking over the Heavy Business podcast. So it's an existing podcast that talks about all things music industry related. We talk to people from record labels, people from PR, press outlets, you name it. Try to help musicians fuck up less.
Yeah. Dude, nice. we should talk to Rick Beato.
I love Rick Beato. He's the man.
Yeah, I love Rick Beato too. Like, I love watching his videos. So yeah, you can. I hopefully I'll be a guest on that podcast sometime in the future. And obviously Matthew with Diceable Tunes. He's got shirts. He's got that attitude, and he's hot and single and in your area. So, like Matthew, are you on Tinder?
No comment.
Trick question. Don't answer that.
If you wanna find the hot singles in your area. So, but no, Matthew has some great. Like, I usually hate reaction videos, but the only reaction videos I watch are Matthew's, and it's because, like all reaction videos, they're like, oh wow. But actually Matthew comments and he's entertaining to watch. So he's the only guy who does entertaining reaction videos, in my opinion. So you can subscribe to his channel, and he talks a lot about like hardcore bands and different stuff. And finally, JC Rock and Metal Reviews, if you want to know your history about music, and also he talks about new metal releases and everything, give him a sub. And obviously, if you like my channel, we got the interviews, Is It That Bad? Album reviews. So if you like that, give us a like as well. So until next time, people, we'll see you on the next episode of Is It That Bad? Right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.